Yes, indeed, folks, you are listening to New Please. Yes, the New Year's Blue Please with myself, Total Biscuit. And yes, I'm getting slightly merry now. Here's a question for you. How many shots of vodka do you think the Total Biscuit drank during that song in order to make it sound bearable? If you answered 13, you would be correct. I'm, of course, lying. That would be ridiculous. One does not drink Russian Standard at that speed. You're doing it wrong. You savour it, because it is delicious. It's not paint stripper. I remember using... Let's not break that glass. Bad idea. I remember using paint stripper vodka at one point. As does Basics vodka. You know what terrifies me? It terrifies me that Asda would have something called Basics vodka. Or was it, Smart Price vodka? I'm sure it's Tesco Basics, isn't it? That was it. Yeah, I got a bottle of this stuff. It's like, since when was vodka a basic form of sustenance? When was that a basic essential beyond, say, I don't know, Eastern Russia? Let's be honest here. I don't really think that goes in the basket with stuff like toilet paper and milk and bread as basic essentials. But I put it in jellies, actually. It was very good. It was delicious. And incredibly intoxicating. It also has nothing to do with World of Warcraft, so let's talk about that, shall we? I could do an entire show on my vodka jelly and the results of it. Oh dear, that was an interesting evening. Right, so, look at your group system. We talked a little bit about it last show, and I generally extolled my praise for the system. Now that I've had a couple of weeks to decide that I don't like it, that's not true. I still like it. I think it's pretty cool, but there are issues coming up with it. And indeed, the illusion of choice is going to cover some of that with your bad pug experiences. But I'd like to talk about mine a little bit and suggest some ways that the LFG system could be improved. The problem with doing things that are sensible, such as improving the LFG system to increase the standards required for certain things, is that it is met by the unwashed populistic... Is populistic even a word? Let's try populist. Let's go with that. There's a populist opinion, that is held by the vocal minority of WoW players. Very loud vocal minority. That anything whatsoever that requires the enforcement of any kind of standards is elitist. It is arrogant. You find many threads on this. I don't know if the American forums have this issue, but the Europeans certainly do. It's probably because we have a lot more bleeding hearts on the European forums than you do in America. For instance, in Europe, we don't celebrate success, and we don't hold it on a pedestal. Success is bad, because it makes everyone else look bad. If someone's like, hey, we've done really well, then the first thing that we try and do is tear them down. It's a horrendous social problem. This goes beyond World of Warcraft into basically anything. Oh, that guy's successful, tear him down. I know there's a lot of anti-intellectualism flying around the US, but it also exists in the UK and in Europe as well. It's becoming a general Western problem. Whereas, of course, in Asian countries, it's less of an issue. And indeed, sometimes the opposite. People are pushed to succeed, so they have to strive. Not in Western societies. Now, sadly, this is translated into World of Warcraft and has become something of a blight. For instance, a guild that has a stringent application process will be mocked on the forums. Now, while I made a little satirical remark in that song, unfortunately that has happened before. I'm not kidding. Obviously not with the vendor mace, but I'm sure someone has been rejected from a guild for having that level of gear. It comes down to the fact that there is a massive entitlement problem in World of Warcraft right now. And it's partially Blizzard's fault. And it's carrying over to everything, including the looking for group system. You recall that I mentioned that there was a massive thread saying that it was unfair that there were any gear restrictions whatsoever on the random LFG system. And of course, that's garbage. Honestly, it's absolute garbage. The level of gear that you actually need to get into the instances is so incredibly low. It really is. It's a joke. I mean, you can be wearing some greens and you can still get in there. You know, some craftable blues, stuff like that. A couple of BOE item level 200 epics and you're in there. Now, there's obviously a little bit of a higher restriction on the ICC instances because they're a little bit harder. Halls of Reflection specifically requires a certain level of DPS. But otherwise, it's really very easy to attain that level. But of course, that was viewed as elitist. How dare you, Blizzard, enforce what is basically gear score? How dare you? And indeed, it upset so many people that Blizzard had actually turned around and legitimized gear score. Now, I've never experienced the bad end of gear score. One thing, because I like to keep my gear relatively good for the content I'm doing. And if it's not good enough, I'll do level-appropriate content to make sure that it is. And of course, I raid and I group as part of a guild, which is what you're supposed to do. Wrath's become this expansion where pugging is apparently absolutely fine. And yeah, okay, they have put in facilities to allow easier pugging. That does not mean that that's what they want you to do. You should be able to tell that from the random LFG system. You can do the random LFG system using, yes, you guessed it, 5 guildies, and you'll still get the bonus badges. So obviously, that's an optimal way to do it, because it's faster, you get in instantly, and you're grouping with people that you know are competent and aren't going to suck. So Blizzard obviously wants that to happen. Cataclysm, yet another example. Making guilds stronger, the guild leveling system. The ability to put on a guild tax, things like that. Expanding the guild system to make it a more attractive option. Because guilds are the best way to do it. It's like the whole family values thing, you know? A nice, stable family is a great environment to raise a kid. It's true. If you have a stable organization backing you up and a stable group of people, then you will progress further and you will achieve more. And of course, it's a great social environment. When you log on and you see the same people day in, day out, and it's like, hey, it's friends, hang around on vent, be nice to people. I don't have to be unpleasant to people in my guild because they're not unpleasant people, and I know they're not stupid. When interacting with people outside of my guild, it's a different story, because they often are stupid, and they often are unpleasant, difficult to get along with. Guilds are a good thing. Now, the problem with this entitlement thing, and the pushing back, this populist rebellion, as it were, that gives it a little bit more credit than it's due. Basically, it's a bunch of whining, entitled, bleeding heart casuals on the forums. I'd hardly call it a rebellion. The problem with that is that Blizzard get the impression that it would be a bad idea to restrict people any further in terms of the LFG system. However, there are a bunch of issues. The biggest problem I see right now is not the gear score thing. That's not the biggest issue. Admittedly, I would like to see it a little bit stricter, but not by much. It's okay. It's pretty solid. The problem, and this is something that you cannot have some automated checker deal with, is the fact that some people are just going to suck regardless of what gear they're in. And we shouldn't have to put up with that. I gave you the example earlier, the true story, not 2 days ago now, of the guy doing 32 DPS. He's not the only hopeless person I've seen. We had a PvP tank, for instance. He was actually bragging about his PvP score. Yeah, he was the worst tank I have ever seen. Seriously, I pulled aggro off him on the main target with 40% threat reduction, and I wasn't even trying. This guy had good gear. 226 to 232. Perfectly capable of tanking Utgard Keep Heroic. And yet I pulled aggro off him. I gave him ample time. And you know what he said? Oh, well, I like to sunder lots of things. And I looked on the main target. Like, no sunder at all. You can't be serious. Really? I mean, I DPS pretty hard. And people in my guild will attest to this. I broke the 10k barrier in Violet Hold. It was a good day. But I wasn't even trying. I mean, it wasn't even a great group for me. There were no beneficial group buffs. I mean, we had a shaman in there that was putting down melee totems, so it's not like he was helping me. I was DPSing in a normal manner with my big threat reduction and everything like that, but I managed to pull aggro on a mob? Are you serious? Pulling aggro on mobs on AoE as well when I give them 10 to 15 seconds to sort it out. And again, Arcane Explosion, not a great AoE. Big threat reduction on that as well.